Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. I'm in the house with a gentleman you're going to find out very shortly who is unstoppable as well. You know, I say unstoppable just to clarify, unstoppable until we get plucked from this planet because it's going to happen to all of us. But while we're here, we might as well go after things that we want to do for our ideal life. And as you know, my mission is all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. So today I have a friend of mine. We're going to be doing some things together here in the near future you're going to be hearing about. But Dr. Richard Shuster is a clinical psychologist, TEDx speaker, CEO of Your Success Insights, renowned media expert, and the host of the Daily Helping podcast, which I had the fortunate opportunity to be a guest on. And this show is actually regularly downloaded in over 150 countries. His mission is to help people become the best versions of themselves and make the world a better place. Dr. Richard, welcome to the What Are You Made Of podcast.
C-Roc, this is going to be awesome. Great to be here. We're going to have a great time today.
All right, man. So we always start the show the same tradition of asking the question, what are you made of?
Given my life experience, I would have to say a little bit of cat DNA because I've definitely used up a couple of my 9 lives. But at a more ethereal level, the unwavering belief that we are never given more than we can handle at a time, and opportunity arises from all adversity. And I am very blessed to be able to do what I do, help a lot of people, and spend my days talking to amazing people just like you.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The first time we had a call, I think it was the podcast I was on your show. And then from there, we've had a few calls after that. And what we're finding, the alignment that we have, which is pretty awesome. And the fact that we got some big plans to work on, big mission ahead of us, a lot of work to do. I'm really excited about. So let me just start off by saying that, man. And so I know you got a story to tell, and you can tell it however you want. But before you do, take me back though to growing up. Like, where did you grow up, and what was life like as a child?
I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan, and my dad was a dentist. And it was really interesting. He himself was self-made. My grandfather was a painter, and not a very good one from what we were told. So, my father was really driven to be successful, and he always instilled in us a couple of things. He used to tell me, find something you love and own it so you can make it yours, and find a way to use that to help a lot of people. My dad was a very good dentist, and his patients loved him, and he could have made a lot more money than he did. He chose to give away a lot of dentistry. When kids couldn't afford it, he would rebuild their mouths for free. And he still had his overhead. He still had his materials and office space and employees. And I remember being in his office once when he did this. And I asked him, why did you do that? And he just said, because it was the right thing to do. And it's funny that these lessons, and I'm a parent now, but these things kind of lay dormant in you. These lessons that our parents teach us until one day you wake up and you're like, I get it. I get that. And, very grateful. I had a really awesome upbringing, very close with my brother. And, but my entrepreneurial journey is really a reflection of a lot of what my dad taught me when I was young.
Love it, man. Well, so from there going forward, how did you get into becoming a doctor?
So the story is ridiculous. I remember very clearly on my way to the bar on my very last day in undergrad at Michigan State University, I held up my glass and said, here's to never setting foot in another classroom for the rest of my life. And 3 postgraduate degrees later, I realized how ridiculous that is as a statement. It was not on my roadmap, C-Roc. I got out of school and I got into IT. And back in the late 90s, it was really the first tech boom. And so if you could chew bubble gum and code at the same time, you could do anything you wanted. And I taught myself how to code websites because of a practical joke I played that it actually got in the Wall Street Journal. That was like the first thing going viral that I was ever exposed to before things went viral. And so I started working in IT, and I started my own company, and I bid on a government contract with the DoD, and I won it. I had no business winning this contract. It was not weapons, missiles. This was medical software for the Army. But here's a 24-year-old punk kid, and this went straight to my head. I was going to be the next Tony Stark. I was going to be the next big thing. I would come home, I would get on eBay, and I would look up private islands for sale, because you can buy islands on eBay. And I was going to name them after myself. That's how obnoxiously self-centered I was. And I started building this company. And then I had a life-changing moment in which I was in a car accident.
Hold on, before you do the car accident.
Yeah.
How much was that contract for?
The contract was not that much money. It was less than $250,000.
Okay. All right.
But
I had no idea. I had no concept of how that works.
It was small. It was small because it was working with some software for the medical records of the Army. I believed it was going to lead to much, much bigger things. But that was, my first job out of college, where I was working in this little IT company. I started at $21,000 a year and thought I was rolling, right? So, you have this amount of money, and I had partners, but you're talking about more than 10 times that. You're like, oh my God, this is it, right? And it was my destiny to build an empire. I used to talk about it, the Shuster empire, right? I was building an empire, and then that accident. And that accident changed everything for me. I remember so vividly. It was so interesting. And I understand this now because of my science background. But the brain is really interesting, C-Roc. So if you're going to be in a life or death situation, what the brain will oftentimes do, it's called tachypsychia, is that it slows our perception of time. Almost like if you think about Neo in the Matrix, when he was dodging those bullets, and they were going by him. He's like, what's going on? So think about, I make a left-hand turn, a car slams into me, airbag goes off, I'm sending towards oncoming traffic, and I crash into a telephone pole. So really 2 impacts. That was just a matter of maybe 2 or 3 seconds. But in that amount of time, as I'm watching the world turn in slow motion, my car spin, windshield shatter, I'm having a full conversation with myself. And I wasn't asking God, please let me live and I'm going to be nice to people. It was the resolution, the knowing that I was about to die, and the reflection on my life, and the watch I was wearing, I wasn't taking with me, and the car I was driving was not coming with me. And all of these things that my parents were about to get a phone call. They were out with friends on a Saturday night. They were going to get a call that their son was dead, and a senseless death. And I broke my spine in that accident. And so I had a lot of time to convalesce, to reflect, to think. And that ultimately led me to my journey. I'm abbreviating this story for time, but I did this, my TED Talk was all about this journey. And so ultimately I walked away from that company, and I took a leap into the darkness because I had no idea what I was going to do next. And it started with a path that led me to volunteership and working with at-risk kids as a mentor, which turned into a master's degree in social work. And I worked with kids who were evacuees from Hurricane Katrina. And now I had a taste for it. Now I had a taste for higher learning, so to speak. And I went after my doctorate in clinical psychology, and then I got subspecialties in neuro and forensic psychology, which sounds really fancy. It just means you do stuff in a court of law. But it gave me this new direction, because what I discovered was that I felt good when I helped people. In that moment after I walked away from this company, which was solely driven by me wanting to make a ton of money and have a lot of stuff for the sake of having things and nothing else, it was when I started selflessly doing things for other people and helping people, that little spark, that was the spark that lit inside of me and began the whole journey that I'm on today. It was really the car accident was what started it all.
Well, what was, when you were going back to school and doing all the degrees and all that, what was your mission in your mind? Instead of the empire, the Schuster empire, what did that mission switch to?
The mission shifted to, I was going to have a private practice. I was going to work with kids, and I was going to do assessments, and I was going to build the framework that would help children in a lot of different ways. And that was really my focus for many years. In fact, even, when I took the boards and I got licensed and I'm out there practicing the world, I'm like, yes, I did it. I'm a doctor. I got my practice. I'm making money. Like, this is really cool. And it still wasn't enough, though. It still wasn't the impact that I thought I could make. And I didn't know how or what I would do to expand that. But for the longest time, it was, okay, I was going to see kids and that was going to be the thing until it wasn't. And it led me to what I'm doing now, which is very different. And it is helping people in a different way, but not in the sense that I thought it would be.
So how did you make that switch then?
It was kind of funny. So I always believed that I had the ability. There were things, I love Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap and Zones of Genius. Communication wise, that's probably what I think I've always been best at: relationships and conveying ideas and emotions to others in really, really simple terms. Like when I worked in IT, initially, I was kind of in this hybrid of sales and tech where I could, my job was basically to explain these high level tech concepts to people that are not IT people, because IT people for the most part are kind of a certain way. And so as I was in practice, I realized, okay, I'm seeing about 300 patients a year. That's really good. And I'm having an impact, and that's important. How could I level up? How could I massively scale that impact? And I had started listening to podcasts because that was a thing. And so I decided to roll the dice and get a microphone and start one, and had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even have the name of a show or a domain or anything. I had my old email and my personal email address and an idea. And I just started. I would get up at 4:30 every day and would just start emailing influencers and authors. And eventually they started writing me back. And that just kind of spread to where now people whose books were on my shelves and I had put them on a pedestal, now they're colleagues, they're peers, they're collaborating, much like what you and I are going to be doing. So the podcast transformed my life to the degree that I went all in with some of these other things I'm doing, and I actually walked away from clinical practice, which was hard to do. In some levels, a lot of people told me that I was crazy. What, you went to school for 7 years and you got this degree and you're not going to use it? No, but because I can make a larger impact. There's trained professionals, whether they're doctors, lawyers, accountants, air traffic controllers, whatever they are, there's always going to be people who do that. But if you have an idea, if you have something that you're passionate about, if you have something that truly lights you up and that you would do for free, and that really taps into all of your gifts, but none of your weaknesses, you owe it to yourself to go after it. And I've got a really badass, amazing, supportive wife who said, you do you. And, now, 250 something episodes later, here we are. And it has transformed my life. It has enabled me to touch and change the lives of other people in so many different ways. We have a charity that I would have never been able to fund and do if not for the exposure I got from the podcast. I have a technology company doing really cool things that would just be an idea if I didn't know the people I know who have been able to help me leverage it and change a lot of lives with it. So I'm just incredibly grateful. Every day is fun, but the journey is built with adversity, and it's important for us to learn from it. I mean, I tell people that car accident was probably one of the two best things that ever happened to me in my life, because if that hadn't happened, I would probably just be spinning my wheels, having no idea how to find fulfillment, because all I would be doing is hunting money.
Yeah. And so then there was another incident that happened. Now you got into this podcast, first of all, and you met some great people. Is that where the tech company came from? Is meeting someone, and was there somebody in particular that helped you start
really
that? Or?
What it was, no, it was when enough people whose names I knew, who I would walk into a Barnes and Nobles and I would see them on a table, when enough of those people started coming to me Jack Canfield came to me, guys like that came to me. You came to me. People like this were coming to me and saying, hey, we want to come on your show. Now, outside, I was saying to people, what brought you to me? Inside, my little imposter voice, because this still wasn't really real to me at the time, was saying, why in the world do these guys want to come on my show? Right. And when enough of them told me, because you're one of the biggest influencers in personal development, then I had this moment where I'm like, okay, I Googled influencer. I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. And I said, okay, if I'm that guy, then I have a responsibility to use my platform and my voice to create change in a lot of different ways that only I can, based on my unique skills, training, and experience. And that's not a statement of arrogance. It's just saying that, we all have our own level, different kinds of expertise from our life experience, whatever it is that we're fascinated with. And so it was kind of neat because technology, I had done the tech company before, right, 20 years prior, but this was so different. And so when I thought about what were the places that I had expertise where I can make a real impact, it was in the world of assessment. Assessments are historically, really, there's two companies in the world that have 93% of the market share of a $7 billion industry. And these two companies, in my experience as a clinician, are the greediest, least inclusive companies I've ever seen in the world. And so I wanted to be the Michael Dell of the assessment space. I wanted to create assessments where the barriers to entry were taken down, because oftentimes people who need access to these resources can't afford them or can't get access to them. I wanted to create assessments that were self-scoring and self-interpreting. So you didn't need to pay somebody like me thousands of dollars clinically or hire a consultant to be able to make sense of it. I wanted to create assessments that leveraged people's gifts, what made them awesome, as well as challenges that they needed to overcome. And I wanted to build the entire platform in a way that I could reward people financially who helped me help others. Nobody had ever done all those things before in an assessment company. And so I built it, and it was scary. And there were days where I didn't know how I was going to make it work. And we had, challenges. But now we sit here today where we have offerings in the B2G, B2B, and B2C space with really unique technological offerings that are algorithmically driven. I know that sounds like just a really multi-syllabic sentence that's confusing, but essentially we've created algorithms that really help people be the best versions of themselves. So it's so on brand, right, with what I want to do, even with my show, and it's taken on a life of its own.
So what? And we're talking about assessments,
right?
Can you give us some specifics on assessments that are made with your platform?
Yeah. So, we started out in the trauma space. So we provide a different way of looking at trauma for veterans and first responders than anything that's out there in the marketplace. We then moved into another area where I'm passionate about having an impact, even though I have never personally been impacted by this. Oftentimes in my practice, where a judge would say, hey, Dr. Shuster, we've got this guy, we think he's a meth addict, go evaluate him and tell us if we should take his kids away from him. It's a heavy question, right? And so I would go through the motions, and I would do that, and I would use the gold standard tools that forensic psychologists use, knowing pretty sure was a high degree of likelihood that this guy was going to be right back on the streets using drugs again. And so I sought an audience with the company that makes this gold standard tool in the addiction space. And they knew who I was. So their leadership spoke to me. And I said, this tool, this assessment could be so much more valuable than it is. Everybody who's abusing drugs kind of knows they're using drugs, but what if your tool tapped resiliency factors? What if it talked about strengths? And they laughed me off the phone. They said, Dr. Shuster, there's no money in resiliency. And I said, fine, I'll do it myself. What? Click. And I built the world's first system for addiction recovery that focuses on resiliency factors to keep people sober, identifies those personality characteristics and environmental risks that could cause relapse. We're the only tool in the world that addresses the racial discriminatory impact that has on addiction recovery. And we're very proud of that tool. We also have tools for talent retention and peak performance in the corporate space. We have tools for high school, collegiate, and professional athletes for peak performance in football, basketball, and a whole lot of sports. And the thing that you kind of alluded to that is important was like the second reset for me. We now have a tool on balance and wellness for consumers, which is really cool.
Yeah. So before you get into that, because I want you to share that with the audience, what happened to you, but what is it like? Somebody goes into it and answers questions?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So
Okay. That's what I was clear on.
They would answer questions, and the algorithm would take their responses and then create essentially a blueprint that's just designed for you. There are, literally hundreds of thousands of combinations what the algorithm pulls from, and then creates a 35-page PDF blueprint for a person, BLUE. So not to be confused with
don't confuse it with blue printed.
But essentially says, hey, here's what you're awesome at. Here's where you might need some work. And so it's really, really a cool thing. We're really the first empirically driven tool in the world on work-life balance for consumers. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I blame Ryan Levesque for this a little bit. And Ryan's been on my show. He's an awesome dude. But, what he did with quizzes, everybody's got a quiz, right? And so, a lot of people don't know the difference between a Teen People quiz on relationships and an empirically validated assessment that is, scientifically created and goes through a rigorous process to, ensure validity. There is a difference, but that's what we do, and we've got some really cool corporate tools. And
so if somebody took it, how accurate is it? Like, how can you determine the accuracy?
So what you do is there's different kinds of validity, and so there's construct validity, which is the question asking what it's supposed to. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're not truthful when you're answering it, you're not going to get accurate results. But we've done this with a pretty large sample size of people that have taken it. And what we did to ensure that it works is we utilize something called the 5-factor model of personality. It's one of the oldest and most tested and scientifically studied theories of personality. And we built our assessments. Each assessment that we utilize is built around that. And then what we do to empirically validate it is we had thousands of people from all over the planet take our assessment and take the 5-factor model. And then there's what's called correlation. And correlation does not equal causation. So, it's not necessarily 1 + 1 = 2, but you're looking for a percentage of alignment. So
Gotcha.
Do the questions align with the 5-factor model? And we had an overwhelmingly high correlation. And in particular, when we teased out certain factors, because there's always outliers, or there's people who are taking surveys just to get paid or whatever reason, whatever they take them. When we tease that out, the reliability went up even higher. So we're very proud of what we've created, and all very cool stuff.
Awesome, man. So what happened to you though? Like I know the story you told me, but tell the audience, like, what happened to you that kind of gave you another wake up call?
Yeah. And that tool that I just spoke about, the consumer driven one, really came from this incident, because I had been advised by a lot of people I really respect, who are high-level influencers, who said, just stay out of the consumer space. It's too confusing and it's hard and there's funnels and it's such a headache. And so we really were never there. And this happened to me in June of 2020. So about a year and a half ago. And I was killing it, Mike. I was at the top of my game. I just did my TED Talk. Revenues had never been higher, and this is in the midst of COVID. Like, I had my best quarter ever, and just was on top of the world, truly. And I went to bed, and I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, and I had a stroke, and I almost died again. So again, I made that cat joke. That's definitely 2 of my 9 lives. Much like the car accident, even though I broke my spine, where I broke it, had it just been a little bit higher of a fracture point, I would have been paralyzed in some capacity. Where the stroke hit my brain was less than a fingernail's length off of a center of my brain called the basal ganglia. People with Parkinson's have, issues with, that's where they have these issues, because that is involved heavily in speech and motor movement. I just missed it. It was like a shot across the bow. And even then, I was a mess. If you had seen me right after the stroke, I couldn't talk properly. My phone's voice assistant could not understand me at all. My thumbs didn't work when I was in the hospital, and I found out, they didn't let my wife in because it was COVID. So once I had the diagnosis, I was trying to text my wife, stroke, STROKE. It's not that many letters, right? But even though in my mind, I knew what I wanted to push, my thumbs would not work. I could not hit those keys. And I had my whole left side of my face was drooping down. And, I spent hours, maybe 8 hours a day, just with my eyes closed, visualizing. My brain was like one of those old school telephone switchboards, and that I would rewire it, and that I would see myself healed completely, back on stages, talking, doing the things I was doing. And I'm grateful to say that I was able to fully recover. But
there's no lingering effects. Do you have any lingering? Good.
No,
awesome.
I don't.
Awesome.
And so, you go down when I was 46 years old at the time. And so, and I, like you, I've got a morning routine, and I work out, and, I ate right, and I didn't drink, and I didn't smoke, and I didn't do drugs, and I had a gratitude practice and meditating. And I did all these things that you're supposed to do to have a balanced life and to be successful, except I really wasn't, because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and particularly as a dad and a husband, you get really jazzed up about these romantic ideas, like you're building your business for the right reason. You want to leave a legacy. You want to provide financial security for your family. We go on these crusades that all entrepreneurs do, but you use that to justify getting on your laptop at 6 a.m. and shutting at 11 p.m. Now, I would stop and come up, and when the kids came home, we'd do dinner and story time and homework and baths and all that good stuff, right? The second they were down, the second you could see the smoke coming off my shoes, I was back in my office on my laptop 7 days a week. And it was an insidious, I didn't even know, because I loved what I did. And really where the slap in the face came was after they did all my lab work, because they had all these theories as to why I had a stroke, ranging from cancer to thyroid to my heart, all these issues, right? So they sent me to every specialist in the world that you can imagine, every ologist, right? There was, I got to see. And when my neurologist was sitting there looking at everything, and he's saying to me, and my wife's in the room, "Well, Richard, we've gone over your results. You're clean. You don't have cancer. You don't have this. You don't have that." He's like, "Let me ask you a question. How many hours a week do you work?" And I said, let me stop you right there, doc. I don't work at all. It's like, "Oh, would you win the lottery? Like, what do you mean?" And he's like, No. I don't work because I love what I do. It's not really work. I love what I do." And he frowned, and he said, "Richard, how many hours a week do you love what you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, about 80. And he's like, "Let me tell you something." And he's like, and I shouldn't have to tell you this because of what you do. If you don't slow down, if you don't work less and stop burning the candle on both ends, this could happen again. And you are remarkably, like, the odds of me, where the stroke was, how it all happened, like the odds of me coming out of it completely unscathed are really, really low. And he's like, this could happen again. And the next time you might not be so lucky."
So wait a minute, but what was it though? Because like, were you not getting enough sleep? Because
that was part of it.
Okay. Cause I was going to say, look, man, really, let's say, I'm just thinking, if you love what you do, unless there was stress coming from it
There's always
and lack of
stress.
sleep, then really doing just being on your laptop's not going to hurt you. Really,
Well,
it's the right. Like,
not necessarily. So stress is stress. Putting a taxation on your body, long hours, that next, oh my God, I'm exhausted, but I'm going to power through. I'm going to
oh yeah,
finish
yeah.
this marketing deck. That's stress. And you might love what you do. And
Oh yeah,
certainly
yeah.
it's easy. I will easily say with confidence and that if you don't like what you do, that's more stressful than if you love what you do. But, yes, I wasn't sleeping as much as I should have.
Yeah.
I, was really pushing myself. There were days where I would record 4 or 5 podcasts, maybe do a media appearance, and then I'd sit down and I'd, put a proposal together. And then I'd look at the clock and it'd be 12:30 in the morning. And I was like, well, I guess I should sleep because I'd get up at 4:30 and start my morning routine, right?
Gotcha.
And
Yeah, yeah.
so, that was the thing. And
So
as
I get 7, 8 hours of sleep. And on a bad day, I get 6. But because I know that, and if I get tired, like I love what I do too, and I go hard. I think I jam a bunch in a short amount of time, and that's how that's how I operate. But man, I love my sleep. Like I don't like to sleep in, but I like going to bed early so that I can get
yeah,
my 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night.
that's right.
You
And
know,
so, when the neurologist was sharing this, my wife was like putting her head in her hands and he'll never stop working. He's an animal, right? And I committed to her 25 hours a week, no more, for the rest of my life. And I went from 80 to 25 and I have never looked back, and it has transformed everything. I have
has your income been affected at all?
more
Yeah.
more income
Yeah.
because what I've done is create filters to where you govern who gets on your calendar. Pre-stroke me on LinkedIn was like a shiny object with a parakeet, right? The parakeets, he's going looking everywhere. Now to get on my calendar, and I created this filter. Essentially, it's 3 levels. Like number 1, you have to first want to really help people. If money is the only driving factor for you, you don't get on my calendar. Secondly, and I think this is really important too, in a world where everybody's trying to sell everything, is that does what you're doing and what I'm doing together, can it be chocolate and peanut butter, right? Can it be better together than they are by themselves? And 3, and this is also very important that entrepreneurs don't think about this a lot, C-Roc. You got to know what your number is. Why, your why and your what in terms of the number amount are very important. Why are you doing what you're doing? So being clear on your values and being clear on how much money do you want and need, and why do you need that much money? Because that helps you decide which opportunities to pursue. And so I have a number. I'm not going to share it, but everybody's number is different. And so if in fact the third step, if we get step A, check, step B, check, step C, and the third one, can our work together generate revenue to satisfy each other's number? And that's how I determine who gets on my calendar. What that has done is it has filtered out 85% of what I used to call garbage Zoom calls, right? Because how many Zoom calls, do most people get on? They meet somebody on LinkedIn or a networking event, and they just are nothing. It's just somebody trying to sell something, or it's vaporware or whatever.
Yep.
This, I have just phenomenal people who truly want to make a difference. They're the ones that are on my calendar. They're the ones who I'm doing business with. And it has escalated when I'm doing significantly, while allowing me more time to focus on the good stuff, to focus on my boys, to focus on my wife, to focus on the things that I really love to do that I wasn't doing before.
What's one thing besides the family? What's your number one thing you like to do?
I love to barbecue, man.
Barbecue.
I
Yeah.
barbecue living in the South. And as I said, I'm not from the South, but it's a religion down here, like SEC football. And so I actually have a team, and I do it a bit competitively. But there's something about smoking meat that's so cool, because you have the carnal element of the fire. The fire is just an awesome thing, but There's some science with it too. I love barbecue.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, Dr. Richard, we're running out of time here. I want to respect your time. We're 5 minutes over, and I apologize. That's my fault. But at the end of the day, I wanted the audience to hear this, and it was important to get all that in. So I want to thank you for coming on today. How can my audience interact with you or engage with you?
The mothership is drrichardschuster.com. I bought every possible domain spelling of it in the world. So spell it however you want. I promise you'll get to me. But drrichardschuster.com has links to everything I'm doing, from my TED Talk to my technology to my podcast and my nonprofit. It's all there.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on today, man. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing some big things with you, big impact things. And we'll have to have you back on once we accomplish some of those things. So
right on, brother. I love it.
You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast. Thank you so much for joining us and for the following and the support of the movement. Go check out Blueprinted at blueprinted.com/VIP. It's our new platform to get results for people. That's BLOO printed.com/VIP. If you're a creator, expert, or know how to do something and know how to do step-by-step process to that, you're going to want to join us. You're going to get on it eventually. You might as well do it now. And keep coming back. Go subscribe to the podcast and also watch it on YouTube at Mike C-Roc, Ciorrocco, if you like to watch these. Until next time, be unstoppable.